Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the place that takes these, while incredibly complex, global challenges, tries to filter out all the noise, and really just hand you the essential knowledge you need.
So you can be truly informed.
Exactly. And today, we are deep diving into something pretty fundamental. It's a security challenge that's basically redefining digital trust.
We're talking about the quantum computer.
Yeah, the inevitable arrival of the quantum computer. And look, this isn't science fiction anymore.
No, not at all.
It's pretty much a mathematical certainty, and it's driving, well, probably the most profound shift in cryptography since the modern internet even began.
Right. And the core problem, it's actually quite simple when you boil it down. Modern digital security, the architecture for global finance, communications, government security, it rests almost entirely on what we call public key algorithms.
Like RSA and ECC.
Precisely. RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, or ECC, and their security, it's not magic, it's just math. Specifically, how hard it is mathematically to factor really, really enormous numbers or solve these things called discrete logarithm problems.
Okay, but that difficulty, the very thing that secured our digital world for, what, decades now?
Yeah, decades.
It just vanishes the moment a fully capable quantum computer comes online.
Pretty much, yes, it vanishes. So what we want to do today is give you a comprehensive shortcut kind of to understanding NIST's big project here. It's been an 8-year, really meticulously structured effort called post-quantum cryptography, or PQC.
Right, the PQC standardization process.
Okay.
We need to cover the specific algorithms they've picked, these quantum-resistant ones.
And crucially, why the global transition timelines are shifting. They're going from just important to, frankly, absolutely urgent.
Okay, but before we jump into the solutions, the new algorithms and all that, we probably need to frame the threat properly, because you said not all quantum threats are the same.
That's a really key point. There are basically two primary risks we're dealing with. The first one, and honestly the most catastrophic, comes from something called Shor's algorithm.
Ah, Shor's. That's the one, isn't it? The one that keeps cryptographers up at night.
That's the one, exactly. Shor's algorithm, if you can run it on what we call a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, or CRQC.
The CRQC, okay.
It can efficiently solve those exact problems we just mentioned, integer factorization and discrete logarithms, the very bedrock of RSA and ECC.
And this isn't just like making it weaker.
No, that's the critical thing. It's not a partial vulnerability. It represents a complete, immediate, irrecoverable failure for all classical public key cryptography.
Wow. Okay, so it's basically game over for asymmetric encryption as we know it.
Essentially, yes.
But thankfully, symmetric cryptography, like AES, the standard for bulk encryption, that's built differently, right? It's more resilient.
Much more resilient. That's the crucial distinction. For symmetric crypto, the main threat comes from a different quantum algorithm, Grover's algorithm.
Grover's. Okay, what does that do?
Grover's can potentially speed up what we call brute force attacks. So trying every possible key. It essentially cuts the effective security strength in half.
In half. So if I'm using, say, AES 256 bits.
Right. A quantum adversary using Grover's could theoretically attack it with the resources that would normally be needed to breach a 128-bit key, classically.
Okay, well, that's serious, but it sounds manageable. You don't have to, like, burn down the entire house.
Exactly.
You just add more walls, as you put it. The solution is pretty straightforward. Just increase the key size. So if I need 128 bits of security against quantum computers, I just use the 256-bit key, or maybe even higher.
Precisely. You implement AES 256 or AES 512, and the algorithm itself, AES, remains secure. The cost is just a bit of performance overhead, which is usually acceptable.
And that explains why NIST, in their PQC program, has focused almost exclusively on replacing those public key algorithms, the KEMs and the digital signatures.
Yes. Key encapsulation mechanisms, KEMs, for establishing keys, and digital signatures for authentication. Their vulnerability is, well, existential. It's disproportionate.
So NIST had to get replacements ready before the quantum threat really materializes.
They had to. They focused on finding completely new mathematical problems. Problems that even a huge quantum computer running Shor's or Grover's or whatever comes next couldn't solve efficiently.
Okay, let's unpack this then. So what NIST has basically done over almost a decade now is run this massive global competition.
A competition, yeah, and a collaboration, really.
To build a portfolio, a collection of different mathematical defenses, they're essentially hedging the future of global security.
That's a great way to put it. Hedging, not relying on just one new type of math, but several completely different hard problems.
Because if they only picked one and then someone found a flaw.
We'd be right back at square one.
Yeah.
That diversity is absolutely core to the whole strategy. They learn from past cryptographic transitions.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's shift gears a bit now from this sort of abstract mathematical threat to the immediate practical threat for organizations. Why do you, listening right now, need to start caring about this today, even if a big CRQC is maybe 5-10 years off?
Yeah, that's the crucial question. It comes down to something called the Harvest Now, Decrypt Later model, HNDL.
Harvest now, decrypt later, or sometimes store now, decrypt later.
Same idea, yes. HNDL is what makes the quantum threat immediate, not just a future problem. Adversaries, and we're often talking about well-resourced nation-states or sophisticated criminal groups,
Right.
they aren't waiting for the quantum computer to actually be built and working. They are right now systematically collecting and storing huge amounts of encrypted data.
So they're just vacuuming up everything that's encrypted with today's standards, like RSA.
Exactly. They're building massive archives of this encrypted data, fully expecting that once they do get a powerful enough quantum computer, they can just go back and decrypt everything they've stolen over the years.
Wow. So data stolen this morning, even if it's protected by strong RSA 2048 encryption, it's not safe forever. It's just delayed exposure.
That's the perfect way to describe it. Delayed exposure. The moment that CRQC arrives, maybe in 2030, maybe 2035, all that previously stolen data becomes instantly vulnerable. The clock is effectively ticking backward on secrets we think are safe today.
So you really have to think about how long your data needs to stay secret, the data lifespan.
Absolutely. Data lifespan versus quantum risk arrival. You have to evaluate how long that data remains valuable. Think about long-lived secrets. Military intelligence, corporate IP, like, say, the design for a next-gen microchip.
Or pharmaceutical patents, patient medical record.
Right. Things that can have value for 20, 30, maybe even 50 years. So if an organization waits until, say, 2030 to even start their PQC transition,
They've already left years of sensitive data exposed to this future decryption risk.
knowingly exposed it, yes. Exposed to being compromised the second that quantum machine power's on. It's a continuous risk that starts now for long-lived data.
And the timeline experts keep pointing to is roughly 2030 to 2035 for a CRQC, right? But are we seeing actual signs, like technical indicators, that this isn't just theory?
We are. There was a recent development, October 2024, from a research team at Shanghai University. It's quite pivotal, actually.
What did they do?
They successfully cracked a small encryption key, only 22 bits, using a quantum computer.
Okay, hang on. 22-bit sounds tiny, like trivially small.
It is trivial. You could break that classically with, a decent laptop, maybe even less. But that's not the point.
So what is the point?
The significance is that they demonstrated the principle. They ran the key-breaking algorithm, Shor's presumably, on an actual physical quantum machine and got verifiable results. It's a powerful indicator, undeniable really, that the hardware is progressing.
So it moves from if to when. When will they scale it up?
Exactly. It shifts the whole conversation. It shows we're moving from theoretical possibility to demonstrable reality, even if it's small scale for now.
And this wasn't a sudden panic in 2024. You mentioned NIST saw this coming years ago.
Oh, absolutely. If you connect this to the bigger picture, the strategic planning started way before the public standardization process kicked off. As early as 2015, NIST experts were looking at intelligence reports, including from the NSA.
And those reports pointed to the 2030 timeline.
They did. They highlighted 2030 as a likely critical inflection point. So NIST understood that the whole process, standardization, adoption, mass migration, needed to be well underway years before CRQC actually arrived.
So the 8-year process starting in 2016 wasn't arbitrary. It was a race against time.
It was a sprint, exactly. They were trying to stay ahead of the hardware development curve. They treated it less like a pure research project and more like deploying critical infrastructure protection.
That makes sense. The standardization process itself became part of the defense against harvest now, decrypt later.
Yes, by creating this open, structured public testing ground for the whole world to basically attack the candidates.
Okay. Let's dive into that process then. This huge 8-year public effort, you called it a gauntlet. It sounds like a massive international academic Hunger Games for algorithms.
Well, maybe not quite Hunger Games, but it was definitely high stakes and unprecedented in its openness. It officially started in 2016 with a public call for proposals. They specifically asked for algorithms based on new mathematically diverse problems. Problems thought to be hard for quantum computers.
And they got a lot of submissions.
They did. By the deadline in November 2017, they'd received proposals from researchers and teams all over the world, 82 initial candidate algorithms in total.
82 potential replacements for RSA and ECC. That must have immediately put a huge target on their backs for cryptanalysts.
It did, and that was exactly the plan. NIST wanted the global crypto community, academics, industry researchers, government agencies to try their absolute best to break these things. The whole process was built around these multi-year rounds.
Rounds focused on breaking them, essentially. Peer review by attack.
Pretty much, yes. Cryptanalysis was the main goal. In round one, starting late 2017, the scrutiny was intense. Researchers published attack after attack. In the end, 26 of those initial 82 candidates were either fully broken or strategically withdrawn by their own designers because serious flaws got exposed.
So the community acted like a global quality control team, shaking out the weaknesses early.
And the rigor was maintained throughout. I mean, the most famous example of this transparency working happened later, during round three. There was a candidate called Psych.
Psych, right. Based on isogenies, it was considered a strong contender, wasn't it?
It was. It looked promising as maybe a backup chem, but then, in 2022, bam, two separate research teams independently figured out a classical attack.
Wait, classical, not quantum. They broke it with normal computers.
Correct. Using surprisingly simple, well, relatively simple mathematics. They found a fundamental weakness in its underlying structure that made it vulnerable to traditional computing power.
So the open process caught it before it became a standard.
Exactly. Because it was open, the weakness was found, published, verified, and Psych was immediately pulled from consideration. Imagine the disaster if that had been standardized and deployed widely first.
Yeah, okay. So the gauntlet worked. What survived? What made it through to become the first actual standards?
The first batch was announced. Well, the selections were announced in July 2022, and they focused mainly on lattice-based cryptography. These seem to offer the best balance of security, confidence, and performance. The final standards, the FIPS publications, came out in August 2024.
Okay, so what are they?
First up, we have FIPS 203. This standardizes ML-KEM.
ML-KEM, that stands for.
Module lattice-based key encapsulation mechanism. It's based on the algorithm submission called Crystal's Kyber. Think of this as the new workhorse. It's the primary general-purpose key exchange algorithm.
So this is what's going to replace things like ECDH and TLS, VPN, secure messaging.
That's the plan, yes. Virtually everywhere we use public key exchange today.
And presumably it needs a signature partner.
It does. That's FIP PS204. It standardizes ML-DSA.
Module lattice-based digital signature algorithm.
Standard, yes. Based on Crystal's dilithium. This is selected as the primary signature standard for general use, so replacing ECDSA and RSA signatures.
Okay, so we have a lattice-KEM and a lattice signature as the primary choices, but doesn't that create a risk? What if someone finds a way to break lattice problems?
That's a huge concern, and exactly why the third selection was so critical. That's FIS 205. This one standardizes SLH-DSA.
SLH-DSA, stateless hash-based.
Stateless hash-based digital signature algorithm, yes. Based on the SFIN-CS Plus submission. This one is fundamentally different. It's the crucial hedge, the backup signature.
Why hash-based?
Because its security doesn't rely on lattices or number theory problems. It relies purely on the security of cryptographic hash functions, like SHA-2 or SHA-3. These are incredibly well studied, and we have very high confidence they resist quantum attacks.
So it's a completely different mathematical foundation, a backup plan.
Exactly. A highly conservative, high-assurance backup. And you mentioned a fourth one earlier, FNDSA.
Yes, there's also Falcon, another lattice-based signature. That's slated to become FIPS 206. The draft is FNDSA. It's optimized differently for smaller sizes.
Right. Falcon is important for specific use cases needing really compact signatures, like maybe blockchain or constrained devices.
Okay, so we have the primary lattice pair, ML-KEM, ML-DSA, the hash-based backup signature, SLH-DSA, and the compact lattice signature, FNDSA. But still, the primary KEM is lattice-based. What about a backup KEM?
Good point. That was the explicit goal of round 4. Since both ML-KEM and ML-DSA rely on lattice assumptions, NIST knew they needed a KEM based on different math, purely for portfolio diversity.
So round 4 was a runoff for a non-lattice KEM.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It ran until early 2025. The main contenders left were Bike, Classic Amides, and HQC, all based on different principles than lattices.
And the winner was, on March 11th, 2025, NIST announced the selection. HQC. HQC, what's that stand for?
Hamming quasi-cyclic code-based KEM.
It's code-based, so like error-correcting codes.
Exactly. It relies on algebraic coding theory, a completely different field from lattice geometry. This provides that vital mathematical independence from ML-KEM.
Why HQC over the others, like Bike or classic Miguelis?
Well, Bike showed some potential vulnerabilities during the analysis rounds. Classic McKellies, while incredibly secure, its keys are just enormous, often over a megabyte.
A megabyte for a public key. Wow. Yeah, just impractical for most uses. HTC offered a good balance, strong security based on codes, but with more manageable key sizes and performance than classic Miguelis. It filled that critical non-lattice chem slot.
And is the process done now, or are they still looking for more options?
It's definitely not done. There's still an active track, the digital signature on-ramp, which is currently in its second round.
An on-ramp.
Yeah, they're still soliciting and evaluating more signature schemes, looking for even greater diversity, maybe based on multivariate polynomials, or perhaps even revisiting isogenies if a secure version emerges.
So they might standardize more signatures by, say, 2027 or 2028. That seems to be the goal. It really highlights that this isn't a one-and-done thing. It's continuous portfolio management, constantly trying to make the PQC toolkit more resilient against future surprises. Okay, portfolio management. That's a good framing. We shouldn't see these as just winners, but as strategic components. Let's dig into the families then. Lattice, hash, and code. This diversity is the key takeaway. It's the ultimate hedge, absolutely. If some breakthrough happens and, say, all lattice problems suddenly become easy, which seems unlikely, but you have to plan for it.
We're not totally exposed. We still have hash-based and code-based options ready.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's start with the performers, the lattice-based schemes, ML-KEM, ML-DSA, and FNDSA. They're generally the fastest of the new bunch.
Right.
And their security is based on MLWE.
Module learning with errors, yes. Conceptually, you can think of it like dealing with points on a high-dimensional grid, a lattice. The hardness comes from finding a secret pattern or structure within that lattice, but where all the points you can observe have been slightly fudged, randomized, there's noise added. So the difficulty is finding the signal through the noise. And that noise messes up a quantum computer's ability to exploit the structure.
That's a pretty good analogy, yes. And this mathematical structure allows for relatively efficient operations. That's why ML-KEM, based on Kyber, was chosen as the primary KEM. It offers good security with reasonably small public keys.
How small are we talking?
Well, for example, the higher security level, ML-KEM 24, has a public key of just 1,568 bytes. Compared to, say, classic Miguelis' megabyte keys, that's tiny.
Okay, 1.5 kilobytes sounds manageable, but you mentioned performance overhead earlier. That's still a big deal for companies trying to implement this.
Right, absolutely. We need to be realistic. PQC isn't just a simple drop-in replacement for ECC or RSA. Even with highly optimized algorithms like ML-KEM, there's overhead compared to what we're used to.
Like how much overhead?
Studies have shown, for instance, just swapping out an ECDH key exchange for ML-KEM in a standard protocol, you might see the runtime increase by a factor of, say, 2.3, which might be okay. But the big hit is often the data size. Yeah, the amount of data exchanged during the key establishment handshake. That same study showed something like a 70 times increase in data overhead compared to ECDH.
Whoa, 70x, that's huge. That's not just a bit slower, that could break things.
It can. It means organizations really have to think about their infrastructure. Network buffer sizes, protocol timeouts, how much memory their servers or even small devices allocate for these handshakes. A 70x increase demands careful system-level planning and potentially upgrades. It's not just about the crypto algorithm itself.
But presumably, performance is improving. Are there optimizations?
Definitely. That was part of why Kyber, ML-KEM, was chosen. It's amenable to optimization. Modern processors often have special instruction sets, like AVX2.
Right, for vector processing.
Exactly. These allow for much faster polynomial arithmetic, which is core to lattice crypto. Using AVX2 can give speedups of around 6 times for key generation and the decapsulation part compared to running it without those optimizations.
So optimization helps claw back some of that performance loss?
It does. It makes enterprise deployment much more viable, though the data size issue remains something to engineer around.
Okay, let's quickly touch on the other lattice signature, Falcon, FNDSA. What's its niche compared to the main one, dilithium, ML-DSA?
Falcon uses a slightly different type of lattice math involving NTRU lattices and fast Fourier transforms, which makes it very efficient at producing compact signatures. Dilithium is great for general use, but Falcon signatures are exceptionally small.
How small?
At the lowest security level, a Falcon signature is just 666 bytes.
666 bytes. Okay, why is that particularly useful?
Think about any environment where bandwidth is scarce or expensive, or where storage is tight. Blockchain is a prime example. Smaller signatures mean you can fit more transactions into a block, which lowers fees and speeds things up.
Or maybe tiny IoT devices.
Exactly. Resource-constrained devices, where every byte of transmitted data or stored certificate matters. For those high-volume, low-resource scenarios, Falcon is really attractive.
Got it.
Okay, let's move to the second family. Hash-based schemes. Represented by SLH-DSA, based on Acidity Meth+, you call this the high-assurance option. Yes. SLH-DSA is philosophically different. It makes almost no assumptions about the hardness of new mathematical problems like lattices or codes. Its security relies entirely on the properties of standard cryptographic hash functions, SHA-2, shake things we've studied for decades and have immense confidence in.
So the security proofs are considered rock solid, even against quantum computers.
Extremely solid. Cryptographers generally agree that hash-based signatures offer the highest level of long-term security assurance against any adversary, quantum or classical. It's seen as the gold standard for conservative, long-term trust.
Okay, if it's so secure, why isn't everything hash-based then? What's the catch?
The trade-off is performance, specifically signature size and speed. CCS Plus uses a stateless design, which is actually a big advantage. It avoids complex state management that has historically led to vulnerabilities in other hash-based schemes.
Stateless is good, but the signatures?
The signatures are large, very large. Depending on the parameters, a single SLH-DSA signature can be up to around 41 kilobytes.
41 kilobytes. Compared to Falcon's 666 bytes, that's enormous.
It is. It's a significant drawback. It means SIC at CS Plus just isn't practical for situations needing high transaction rates or operating over slow networks.
So it's not for websites or messaging. What is it for? Specialized uses.
Exactly. Its role is in mission-critical systems where that long-term security guarantee is worth the performance penalty. Think about signing the root certificate for a major certificate authority. That key needs to be trusted for decades.
Or maybe signing firmware updates for critical infrastructure or military hardware.
Precisely. Things that are signed infrequently, but where the validity and integrity of that signature absolutely must hold for a very long time. In those cases, the 41 KB size is an acceptable price for the ultra-high assurance of the hash function foundation. Okay, that clarifies its role. Now the third family, code-based schemes. This gave us the backup KEM, HQC. Right. HQC provides that essential hedge against a potential failure in lattice-based assumptions for key exchange. Its security comes from a different area of mathematics, algebraic coding theory.
Coding theory, like fixing errors in data transmissions.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's based on the difficulty of decoding a message that's been deliberately corrupted with errors according to a specific code structure. It's a mature field originally developed for reliable communication over noisy channels, now repurposed for cryptography.
So its security relies on fixing errors, not factoring numbers or finding lattice points. A completely different kind of hardness.
Completely different.
Yeah.
And that independence is its primary value in the PQC portfolio. It ensures that even if some major breakthrough compromises lattice KEMs, we have a fundamentally different KEM ready to go.
And you mentioned classic Michaelis was also code-based but had huge keys.
Yes, classic Michaelis is the original code-based public key system, proposed back in the 70s. Phenomenal security record, still unbroken. But its public key essentially is the large matrix describing the code, which often resulted in megabyte-plus key sizes.
Just too big for practical use.
For most applications, yes. Especially anything involving networks or constrained devices. HQC uses more modern coding theory techniques, specifically involving quasi-cyclic codes, to achieve strong security with significantly smaller keys than Michaelis, making it a viable, diverse backup KEM. Okay, so we have the threat defined, the new toolkit lattice hash code is selected. Now comes the hard part, the transition. And here's where it gets really interesting, you said. The timeline is daunting. It really is. The scale of this migration is just staggering. NIST themselves estimate that a full global transition could take anywhere from 10 to 20 years. 10 to 20 years? That's a huge window. It is. It's comparable to previous major crypto transitions, like moving the world from the old DES encryption standard to AES. These things take a very long time because cryptography is embedded everywhere.
And that long timeline is exactly why starting now is critical, because there are hard deadlines looming.
Precisely. The U.S. government mandates, in particular, set clear final checkpoints. We're talking 2030 and 2035.
Right. Can you spell out those deadlines again?
Sure. For legacy public key algorithms that provide only 112 bits of security, think some older RSA or ECC parameters still in use, they will be formally deprecated after 2030.
Deprecated meaning discouraged.
Discouraged, yeah, and likely flagged by compliance tools. But crucially, they must be completely disallowed, blocked, after 2035.
And what about stronger legacy algorithms, like the ones providing 128 bits or more?
Even for those, the final disallowance date is still 2035.
Okay, wait. Is 2035 just a U.S. government thing? What if a company has big operations in Europe or Asia? Does it really force them?
Technically, it's a U.S. federal mandate. But practically, given how much of the world relies on U.S.-developed software, cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, and follows U.S. standards, especially in interconnected areas like finance or supply chains, it effectively becomes a global deadline for anyone wanting to interoperate or meet compliance standards.
So realistically, most major organizations worldwide need to target 2035. They do. And the absolute critical point for everyone listening is 2035 is the finish line. It's the deadline for completion, not the date you start thinking about it. If you wait until 2030 to start planning.
You're cutting it incredibly fine, and you've already accepted years of that harvest. Now, decrypt later risk for any data encrypted before your transition, you're essentially betting the CRQC won't arrive before you finish migrating.
Okay, so given this long transition, the HNDL risk, and even the small possibility that one of the new PQC algorithms might show weakness later, what's the most important strategy for companies?
Without a doubt, it's achieving crypto agility.
Crypto agility sounds like a buzzword, but what does it actually mean in practice?
It's really an architectural necessity now. It means designing your systems, your software, your hardware, your protocols so that you can swap out cryptographic algorithms, keys, and even entire protocols quickly and flexibly with minimal disruption.
So architecting for change from the start.
Exactly. If, hypothetically, a serious flaw was found in ML-KEM 5 years from now, a crypto-agile organization wouldn't face a massive multi-year emergency engineering project. They could, ideally, deploy the backup like HQC relatively quickly, maybe in weeks or months.
How do you achieve that? Modularity.
Modularity is key. Things like using centralized key management systems, abstracting crypto libraries so applications don't hard-code specific algorithms, standardizing APIs. If you have to manually patch thousands of different devices or legacy applications just to change one signature scheme, you are definitely not crypto-agile.
And this touches everything, right? PKI, VPNs, code signing.
Everything that uses public key crypto. TLS for websites, SSH for server access, secure email, SME, PGP, document signing, software updates. The list is enormous.
Okay, so crypto agility is the goal, but getting there takes time. What about the immediate risk? That's where hybrid solutions come in.
Yes, hybrid approaches are the essential bridge. They're crucial for managing the HNDL risk during this long transition period.
How do they work? You combine old and new.
Basically, yes. You run both a classical algorithm, like standard ECC key exchange, and a new PQC algorithm, like ML-KEM, in parallel during the connection setup.
And you combine the results somehow.
You typically combine the secret keys derived from both methods, perhaps by concatenating them and hashing the result to form the final session key. The critical property is that the overall session security relies on the strongest of the two algorithms.
Ah, I see. So an attacker would have to break both the classical part and the PQC part to compromise the session.
Exactly. If they can break the classical key but not the PQC key, you're still secure thanks to TQC. If somehow the PQC key was weak but the classical key holds, you're still secure thanks to the classical crypto.
So it gives you immediate protection against HNDL using the PQC component while still retaining the confidence and compatibility of the well-understood classical crypto.
That's the layered assurance it provides. It's the recommended approach for near-term deployments while organizations build towards full PQC migration and crypto agility.
And are big players actually doing this now?
Oh yes, we've seen early adoption. AWS, for example, integrated a hybrid option using ML-KEM into their key management service for TLS connections quite a while ago.
Signal, the messaging app too, right?
Signal also implemented a hybrid protocol using an ML-KEM-based algorithm. These real-world deployments by major services prove that hybrid is feasible and effective, even for large-scale consumer applications. It's not just theory anymore.
Okay, so hybrid is the path forward for now. But the hurdles to full migration are still pretty significant, especially around performance, as you mentioned.
The practical challenges are substantial. We talked about the larger key and signature sizes and potentially slower operations. This impact is felt most acutely in resource-constrained environments.
Like the Internet of Things.
Exactly. The IoT landscape is vast and incredibly fragmented. You have devices with tiny amounts of memory, very limited processing power, maybe running on low-bandwidth networks, often with firmware that's hard or impossible to update. Trying to run PQC handshakes or store large PQC certificates on these devices can be extremely difficult, sometimes impossible without hardware changes.
And just figuring out where all the crypto is must be a nightmare for big companies. That's often the very first and biggest hurdle, the inventory task.
Yeah.
Just discovering and cataloging every single place where vulnerable public key cryptography is used across a large enterprise. It's often hidden in third-party libraries, legacy systems, embedded devices, things nobody has looked at for years.
Exactly. You can't migrate what you don't know you have. This discovery and assessment phase is proving incredibly time-consuming and is a major blocker for many organizations right now. Plus, the scale of testing needed.
Yeah, validating that the new stuff works correctly and doesn't break existing systems must be massive.
Immense investment in testing and validation is required.
Yeah.
Ensuring backward compatibility where needed, testing the performance under real-world load, checking interoperability between different vendors' implementations. It's a huge undertaking.
Okay, so for an organization listening, feeling maybe a bit overwhelmed, what's the strategic roadmap? What are the recommended phases to get to that 2035 deadline?
NIST and other bodies generally recommend a phased approach. It has to start with discovery and assessment.
Finding all the crypto.
Finding it all, yes.
Yeah.
A complete inventory of every cryptographic asset keys, certificates, the applications using them, the libraries involved. And critically, you need to map this inventory against data sensitivity and required lifespan. Which assets protect data that needs to be secure past 2035? Those are your highest priority for migration.
Okay, inventory first, then what?
Phase 2 is piloting and integration of hybrid solutions. Take the new standards, primarily FIPS 203, ML-KEM, and FIPS 204 ML-DSA, and start testing them.
Not everywhere at once, but in controlled environments.
Exactly. Set up pilots, maybe in testing labs or for specific internal applications. Use hybrid modes. This lets you measure the real performance impact on your systems, understand the network overhead, troubleshoot integration issues, and build that crucial internal expertise. This phase is about learning and preparing.
Makes sense. Learn by doing, with the safety net of hybrid.
And the final phase. The final phase is full migration and deprecation. Based on what you learned in piloting, you execute the systematic rollout of PQC across all your critical systems. You utilize the portfolio diversity, maybe ML-KEM and ML-DSA for general use, SLH-DSA for signing firmware, Falcon for specific high-volume uses.
And eventually turn off the old stuff.
That's the goal. Formally deprecate and then actively disallow the use of all the legacy quantum-vulnerable algorithms like RSA and ECC by that 2035 deadline. It's a massive program, absolutely, but breaking it down into these phases, discover, pilot hybridize, migrate, deprecate, is really the only manageable way to tackle it.
Okay, let's try to wrap this up. To summarize this deep dive, what NIST has pulled off here, this multi-year standardization effort, it's really a landmark achievement in proactive cybersecurity.
It really is. They took a largely theoretical threat, the quantum computer, and successfully guided the world towards creating a tangible, diverse, and actionable toolkit of vetted replacements, spanning those three key families: the efficient lattice schemes like ML-KEM and ML-DSA, the super high assurance hash-based SLH-DSA,
And the essential code-based backup, HQC.
and the publication of these final standards in 2024 and 2025. It really marks a formal shift. The focus is now moving decisively from the research labs into enterprise IT departments. The tools are available, the deadlines are known, the strategic path is reasonably clear.
So what does it all mean, bottom line? It feels like the success metric has shifted. It's no longer about finding the algorithms.
No, the algorithms are largely settled, at least for this first generation. Success now hinges entirely on implementation, the diligence, the technical capability, the resources that organizations commit to making this transition happen.
The resilience of our future digital world depends on execution now.
Precisely. And with that shadow of harvest now, decrypt later, constantly looming, it's actually implementation failure, not some unexpected breakthrough in cryptanalysis, that poses the most clear and present danger to sensitive data right now.
Okay. That leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought. Something for you, the listener, to mull over after this deep dive.
We all agree, I think, that this transition to post-quantum cryptography is absolutely essential for global security. But the cost is undeniable. It's going to run into the billions, maybe trillions globally when you factor in all the person-hours and system upgrades.
It requires huge technical expertise, massive effort, significant financial investment.
Right. So while NIST's open standards are designed to promote equitable access to the secure algorithms themselves, here's the question. Will the sheer burden of implementing this global PQC mandate inadvertently widen the existing digital divide? Could it make truly robust, quantum-resistant security practically inaccessible for smaller companies, nonprofits, or even entire developing nations that just don't have the resources for such a massive overhaul?
Will the cost of staying secure in the quantum era become the next great barrier, leaving some parts of the world fundamentally less protected?
Something to think about. The burden of implementation might be the unexpected consequence. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the quantum-safe road ahead.
We hope this knowledge helps accelerate your own preparation.